And Larry Scott was the first Mr. Olympia. Well, at the time I won it, it was the first time the contest had ever occurred. So it wasn't a big deal. It didn't have any notoriety or anything at the time. It was just like, Mr. Olympia, what does that mean? I said, I don't know what it means, but I won it. And it happened to be a contest that Joe and Betty Weeder made up. We just went to breakfast, and the subject came up because Joe said, we're going to get a contest that when the Mr. Universe has to retire from, we want to have some way in which he can make a living at it. And so there's a way he can make money afterwards. Let's make a contest that you don't retire from. You can compete in year after year after year. And so that's the way the first Olympia started. That they built it for the benefit of the bodybuilder so that he could make a living in bodybuilding. And he's a nice teacher. And Joe really did love the bodybuilders. He tried to make a way for them to make a living from it. And Betty and he were both just together like that in this particular aspect.
I said, I want to be Mr. America. And he says, why don't you enter my contest? And it was the IFBB. And it was just starting, just the idea. And I thought, I didn't say it to him, but I thought, who wants to win IFBB? Who knows IFBB? I want to win AAU, Mr. America. That's what I want. I said, no, Joe. I said, I got my heart set on AAU. He says, you can't win that. He says, why not? And he says, because that's fixed. He picks who wins that contest. And I said, well, I think I can do it. I still can. So, and I met Isaac Berger, who was a powerlifter. And he says, I know Bob Hoffman. He says, you got to meet him. You got to get to know him. You got to get in good with Bob Hoffman, or you'll never win his contest. So he said, at the next Mr. America, which was in Santa Monica, in which Joe Benda won it, he said, you come backstage after that contest, and I'll introduce you to Bob Hoffman. I said, all right, great. So we went backstage at the AAU, and he took me up to Bob Hoffman. He says, Bob, there's someone here who wants to meet you. Larry Scott would like to meet you. And Bob Hoffman turned around, he looked at me, he said, oh yes, I've seen him in other magazines. And turned his back on me. Isaac Berger walked off, and I'm standing there on stage. He's got his back turned to me, and just leaves me there. And I thought, I walked off. And I thought, here I'm talking to Joe Weeder, and he's giving me all this help and encouragement and everything. He turns his back on me when I want to enter his contest. I said, that's it. I'm done with AAU. And I had just won the universe. And they said, we need to come up with a contest in which all the Mr. Universes can compete in. All the Mr. Americas, can compete against one another and see who's the best in the world. I said, that's a great idea. Maybe we get Bill Pearl and these other guys that were my heroes to come in. I'd like to see how I would stand up next to them. Let's call it something that sounds health producing or something, like Mr. Broccoli. That wasn't what I said, but something better than Olympia. Well, anyway, I lost. I voted on it. He says, no, Olympia. He says, think of Mount Olympus, like the grandeur of that. And I said, yeah, I can see that. And so we decided then there to call it Mr. Olympia. Well, let's see. I won the first Mr. Olympia in 1965, and they provided a $1,000 gift. First time. I mean, you had to pay your own way to get to the show. You had to pay your own flights, everything. You had to have a job too, because nobody was paying for your supplements or anything like that. You had to have a job, so you worked, make the time to the gym, you go to school. I had to rush from the school over to the gym, get my workout done. Then when Joe gave you a $1,000 gift, that was great, man. $1,000 was a lot of money. The next year, we Mr. Olympia, and I said, I'm going to go in this one more year, because I know that the happiness doesn't exist on the stage. It exists in the family. So I want to win it the second time, so at least I can say that it wasn't one time thing. I won it twice. And then I'm going to retire.
At the time, you're looking for lines, because our heroes then, they had lines, and they'd get calves like you have, and you try to get biceps and to fit in with your triceps, and so whenever you're working out, you're not just looking for size, you're looking for ways to get that. Oh no, that's not quite right. I want to get that. I want to build that. Because then when you're looking at it, you assess it. Ooh, that's looking better. I got to give me more sets. And following them, when you flex your arm, you say, it looks different. Well, I want to have this. I want to have the tricep hang down as much as the bicep sticks up. Then when you stick it out, and it's really proportionate, looks real pretty. I was always smaller than usual, and one day I went to the dumps. I kicked all our stuff out, and I saw a pile of magazines about like that, and they were Field and Stream, Outdoor Life. So I said, "Oh, look at that, man! Look at all!" I took those things home, and I got home, I went halfway through, and there was a magazine that said Muscular Development. Muscular Development. I said, "Look at that guy! Jeez, Christmas! Look at the size of that guy!" Said, "Oh my gosh!" I didn't start out big at all. I was kind of a scrawny little kid. I hated it. Matter of fact, here's a picture of me when I was in the 7th grade. You could count my ribs right through my pecs. And I wanted to be looked up to, admired, loved, appreciated, and I wasn't. I was skinny. And then one day, something happened that changed my life. I went to the dumps. Here they call it the barge, because you're not supposed to call it the dumps. It was the dumps. And then I found this muscle magazine, and I had a picture of a bodybuilder, and he was flexing his tricep, like this. And underneath it says, "You too can have an arm like this in 30 days. Look at that guy. I took that magazine home, and I got some old wood off of our wood pile in the backyard, and I leaned it up against our roots. And I started doing those funny exercises that was in that magazine. And I started to get a pump, and I started growing. I got a little bit bigger. It was great because I felt myself getting bigger. Matter of fact, I remember I graduated, my arm was 12 and a half. I had never seen a muscle magazine before, and I thought, oh man, look at that, oh man. And as I flipped the page over, inside it had a picture of George Payne, and it said, "You too can have an arm like this in 30 days. I took that thing home, and I had an old tractor axle out there, and it was real thick, it was solid steel, and I tore that thing down, and I started doing those funny movements that it showed in that magazine. I started to get a pump. And I had never had a pump before in my life. And I ran in the bathroom and locked the door so my sisters couldn't come in and see me doing it. I'm in there flexing my arm in the mirror and said, "Oh, my God." And I went back out and grabbed that tractor and started pumping those exercises. I started getting a little bit bigger. And boy, I was hooked. And that's what I did. And the people started saying, "Hey, you were lifting weights or something?" I said, "Oh, no, not me." But boy, I tell you, I can't tell you. When they noticed me, my self-esteem needed that so badly. My head grew faster than my body. I just started, "Oh, gee, this is incredible." I took that thing home, and I didn't have any weights, but I did have a bar on the swing set, and that they used for doing flyaways. I was into gymnastics, I believe, and I took that down. It was actually a tractor axle. I took that thing down, and I started doing those movements with that, because I had the magazine. And it showed George Payne doing the exercises for triceps. I said, I can learn that. So I took that thing out there, and I started moving those funny movements. And I looked at my arm, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm getting bigger." Oh, wow. I was so excited. I ran back out there again. I started doing more sets and more sets. I got a pump. I didn't even know what a pump was. I said, "My arm doesn't feels funny. It just feels." Somebody's helped me. And I learned just off of that tractor axle how to start building arms. We didn't know anything. We didn't know the first thing about posing or anything like that. But there it was held. First one was held in a little contest, like I say, in that theater. I remember the name of the theater was in Boise, Idaho. And so I kept training. I was super excited. I wanted more than just triceps. But there's nobody. I was living in Pocatello, Idaho, and nobody knew anything about nutrition in Idaho. So I said, I got to get out of here, and I got to find a place where the people know about nutrition. So I headed for California.
not long after, I learned of Vince Stronda and the Iron Brewer, and I graduated to his health club, and I started to learn all these little tricks from Vince. He knew a lot of things. I mean, he's way ahead of his time. He started telling me different ways of holding the weights and different ways of moving, and I started to make more progress. And I found that when I looked at these big guys I had to compete against, and when I used the exercises the way the magazine said, I just didn't make any progress. I had to find ways to do things that would work for a guy that was genetically average, or even less than average. Using all these little things, I learned to put aside one night a week to just experiment with the ideas that I got and that Vince gave me. So here I was 2 years later. I entered Mr. America, and it was a 7-year dream come true. I stopped in a little town called Brigham City, Utah, and the local newspaper came out and took shots right on my parents' front lawn. Man, I was standing there, the hero returning home. Oh, gee, I tell you, it was so great for my ego. I felt so fantastic. It's just exactly what this little Pocatello kid needed. But anybody ever heard of Harold Poole? He was 20 years old. He won Mr. America. I mean, he was the rave of everybody. This guy's going to take your plow. And so I competed against him in the Mr. Universe, and they were right. He did. I lost to Harold Poole. It was really good for my humility. That's what it was, because I thought, I'm winning everything, man. I'll dust this guy off. And I didn't. He beat me. And I thought, man, I got to learn. So I went home that night and started training for the next year of Mr. Universe. And so the next year after that, here I was. I won Mr. Universe in 1964. I was starting to get bigger, starting to carry some pretty good size in my guns, and starting to impress the people. And I thought, I'd won Mr. America, won Mr. Universe. That's it, man. That's it. As high as you can go. And Joe Weider and I were buddies, and he said, Larry, everybody does Joe Weider. Larry, we're going to do something different. I said, what's that, Joe? He says, we're going to create a new contest. Only the Mr. Universes and Mr. Olympia can compete in it. So I was going to be able to compete against all of my heroes, all the guys that were up on my ceilings, Steve Reeves, Bill Pearl, all those guys that were just beyond belief. And also, I was going to have to compete against Harold Poole, because he had beat me, and this is my chance to see if I could beat Harold Poole. So the first Mr. Olympia. And they put that dumb imperial margarine crown on my head. And I worked so hard to comb my hair so pretty. And Joe kept sticking that thing on my head. And I could keep hearing that sound in that imperial margarine commercial. And I said, take that thing off. Now it doesn't look too bad. Should have kept it on. The next year I repeated again. And I won Olympia in 66. And then I truly did retire.
I was always underweight, but never would I ever did a trophy for my body.
Somebody.
Yeah, right. I never thought of it.
But I was sure proud of it.